Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hello, this is Leslie Walker-Hirsch, and this morning I'm talking with Terry Monkaba, who is the Executive Director for the last 17 years, 11 years of the Williams Syndrome Association. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Leslie. How are you?
I'm really good. So, Terry, how did you get involved with the Williams Syndrome Foundation
Uh,
Association?
I got involved with the association actually within 4 months of my son's birth. My son was diagnosed with Williams when he was just 6 weeks old. And soon after we got out of the hospital after his first surgeries, we learned that there was an association, that there was a support group, and they happened to be having a convention in 3 weeks. And so we went to what was the association's second ever convention, our first ever, when Ben was just 6 months old. And I have been working with them in some form ever since, first as a volunteer, then as a board member, and now for the last 16 years, no, actually, for the last 26 years as executive director.
Well, that's wonderful. So you know about Williams syndrome from the side of both a parent and a professional. And I know you have an MBA so that your management of the Williams Syndrome Association is well grounded in business, solid business practices.
Well, I
And,
hope so.
and you're the Energizer Bunny too, but that's another story. And so, for people who are not familiar with the term Williams syndrome, can you tell a little bit about what Williams syndrome is? Used to be called Prader-Willi syndrome, and then the name was changed. So, tell a little bit about what Williams syndrome is and what are some of the frequently occurring characteristics of a person with Williams syndrome.
Sure, Williams syndrome actually, it used to be called Williams-Boyrin syndrome. Now it's just Williams syndrome. And it is a deletion of 26 genes on chromosome 7. So that is just 1/10 of 1% of your genetic makeup. But as a result of that one micro deletion on chromosome 7, individuals can have mild to very severe cardiovascular problems, kidney problems, other medical issues, as well as learning disabilities and developmental delays. The kids have um, sort of profoundly affected visual spatial skills and fine motor difficulties. But on the other hand, they're extremely social and highly verbal. They have a passion for music that most of us don't have. And they are just very endearing, wonderful folks.
And at your conference, I heard that beautiful singer with perfect pitch. She was amazing. It's good to talk to you. And so how is Williams syndrome diagnosed?
There are two ways to diagnose it. They are both blood test based. One of them is called a FISH test, or which stands for fluorescent in situ hybridization. And what that is a process where they take the blood, then they grow DNA, and with that DNA they insert a probe that actually lights up the elastin gene, and the elastin gene is the marker gene for Williams syndrome. So a person with everybody has two sets of chromosomes, and therefore there should be two elastin genes, and so two little lights on the microscope slide when they look at it. And so if they only see one light, then the individual has Williams syndrome. And the other way nowadays, there's another test. It's called a microarray, and it actually looks at the entire chromosome 7 and can look at every single gene, and so it can see all 26 genes that are missing and
And
diagnose
so,
correctly.
so this is a genetic condition. And so are people with Williams syndrome able to marry and have children? And what is the likelihood that those children will also have that syndrome?
Sure, they're able to marry and reproduce if they care to. Most don't, because of the developmental delays and the cognitive issues. It really is difficult for them to have a full-time job and to handle the decision making of a household. It's hard work, as we all know, to manage a household and to manage a family. And most individuals with Williams aren't able to do that. Additionally, if they were to have a child, although for those of us who, in the general population, who have children with Williams syndrome, the incidence is 1 in 10,000. So it's quite rare, and it occurs spontaneously. It's a spontaneous deletion. But for an individual with Williams, since they already have that affected chromosome 7, they have a 50% chance of passing it on. And most of the adults understand that with the high likelihood of having a child with Williams syndrome, if they were to reproduce, they probably would not be able to care for that child. So most individuals who do have children with Williams syndrome are individuals who didn't know that they themselves had Williams syndrome, or it was, from an accident for one reason or another. Very few planned children.
And so, why is sex education so important for Williams syndrome? People who have Williams syndrome and their family. Why is it especially important for that group?
Individuals with Williams are highly vulnerable. That social personality that I told you about is coupled also with an inability to read social cues and a difficult time with understanding nuance and what somebody else might be meaning through their actions or activities. And so they're driven to speak to sort of everyone that they see and develop a friendship. And oftentimes the cues that they give out, as well as the cues coming back at them, are misunderstood. And so they're highly vulnerable in the public eye. And of course, unfortunately, I know only too well from the seat that I sit in here that they are, a predator's delight. It's really sad to say, but they know a vulnerable population when they see one. And unfortunately, through Facebook and other social media now, they can see all of these, young people with Williams syndrome who sometimes have friend lists of 6 or 7,000. They, and of course, 5,098 of them they don't know, and it's so scary for all of us as parents. And their maturity level is far below their chronological age. Typically they're sort of 12, 13-year-olds for life. So you can understand, what a difficult time middle schoolers have in general. And so for a person with Williams syndrome to be, 25 or 30 or 40 going on 13 is a real tough place to be. And couple that with how much they love people and how much they really yearn for relationships. It makes sex education extremely important and oftentimes very highly overlooked.
And how would sex education in a typical class be improved for a person with Williams syndrome? How could that be supplemented to further address some of the concerns for exploitation and for socialization?
I think the two most important things for classroom teachers to understand about our kids are that they really respond to things that are concrete. They're not good at inference. So they need a very straightforward and a very simple explanation and curriculum. So typically, a regular curriculum in a regular high school or even middle school is over their heads and they don't quite get it. So they need the other thing is they need a lot of practice. They can hear what they're supposed to do. They can repeat it back. But repeating it back once and remembering it down the road is very, very difficult. So one thing that can be very helpful, especially in a high school environment, is practice with their peers. For a lot of high schoolers, that can be pretty uncomfortable. But individuals with Williams syndrome love role play, and they're quite good at it. They're good actors, and they love to, and they're really socially uninhibited. So they're happy to take on those roles. It doesn't bother them. So any opportunity for role play in a regular classroom with their peers is going to, number one, help their peers understand the way they think and how they are. And it's going to help them learn from their peers how to act. And it's going to save them from a lot of embarrassment in the future.
That's great. And I know the circles curriculum is very widely used among people who have Williams
Yeah,
syndrome.
especially those who are in the special programs, who are not in necessarily regular high schools, but maybe in transition programs after high school or in other more self-contained environments. The the Circles curriculum has been wonderful. You know, the bright colors and the very concrete uh, numbers, different folks who go in each color, they respond to that and they understand, oh, you're in my purple circle, I can shake your hand, or whatever that happens to be. They need that concrete, and they're drawn to the color. They're drawn to music. They're drawn to, you know, crafts and any kind of anything that puts um, real life into the learning is going to help them. Words on a paper don't mean so much, but they can relate to those other sort of things.
And how does the Williams Syndrome Association support families and kids and adults with Williams syndrome?
You know, Leslie, we're trying really hard to be the most comprehensive resource for individuals with Williams syndrome and their families nationwide, even worldwide. Now we have members all across the world, and we provide services throughout their lifespan. So from infancy all the way through senior citizens, and we provide both educational, written, as well as web-based resources. We provide seminars, conferences, the national convention, like the one that you attended, social events and picnics and fundraisers, all sorts of resources, as well as scholarships and grants that directly affect both the parents and the research community as we try to learn more about Williams.
And Terry, to end our interview shortly, how can people get in touch with you if they need more information about Williams syndrome and socialization and sexuality education?
You know, the easiest way, of course, is the website, williams-syndrome.org. It's easy. We're easy to find there and on Facebook and other social media. We can also be reached by phone at 800 806 1871. And we're here answering questions all of the time and love to do that. And we have an email address at info@williams-syndrome.org.
Terry, it's been lovely talking with you, and thank you so much for agreeing to spend part of your morning with me and with the people who'll be viewing this on in their newsletter and also on YouTube. So thanks so much. Have a wonderful holiday season.
No, it's my pleasure, Leslie. You too. Thank you.
So long.
Bye.